You're listening to Turn 2 Podcast, presented by Nosebleed Knowledge. Now here's your host, Tucker Franklin.
What up, guys? Episode 7 of Turn 2 podcast all about baseball. I'm here with my boy, KB Kieran Brennan.
How's it going?
We are actually sitting in the parking lot of Kauffman Stadium. Kieran Brennan and I, we decided to go to the Royals game to watch the Angels and the Royals play. Royals get 2-0 victory. It's a great day to be a Royals fan.
Yeah, it was a well-pitched ball game on both parts. Tyler Skaggs pitched well, but he'll end up with the loss. What's his name? Brad Keller. He pitched really well, which is kind of unexpected from what I gathered from Tucker's reaction when they announced that Brad Keller was starting. He didn't look too excited about it. So the fact that this Angels lineup is really good, and it would have been even better in like 2012. So the fact that they were able to hold them to no runs throughout the day, all around pretty good performance from a team with, we'll say, shaky pitching.
Yeah, you mentioned a team that would have looked good in 2012. We were going through that lineup. Ian Kinsler, All-Star in 2012. Mike Trout, Rookie Year, almost won the MVP. Justin Upton, absolute stud in 2012. Albert Pujols, stud. That was a contract year. Offseason, that was his first year with the Angels. Luis Valbuena, young guy. Andrelton Simmons was with the Braves at that time. We think he was. Stud. Cole Calhoun, that guy's really been struggling this year. He's batting like 190-something. If he's lucky, batting 190-something. But, that guy can hit a ball far when he hits it hard. I think this is the first game this year that I've been to, but the first game in 2 years I've seen the Royals win.
Yeah, this is the first game in a while that I've seen the Royals win. I came to the 2 out of the 3 games where they played the Astros, and the Astros just mollywopped them in back-to-back games. So this is the first time I've seen the Royals win in a while, which, this isn't a very good ball team this year, so they're not winning a lot of games, but I'm also not a Royals fan, so I don't pay that close attention to them.
Yeah, the Royals still bottom dwellers in the AL Central. White Sox 26-51, Royals 24-54. So adding to that win column, it's really nice. Kieran actually didn't know that we let go, DFA'd our W guy, KC. Because there's not much need for a W guy to hang a W when you are 20 games back of first place and have lost 54 games and on pace to lose 113.
Yeah, I was pretty disappointed. The Royals won. I was waiting for him to come out and hang up the W, and then Tucker told me that they decided to part ways, which I guess is for the best. He kind of always gave me the creeps. And like Tucker said, there's not much need for a guy to come out and hang up a W. And honestly, walking out and hanging up a W is a job that anybody can do. It's not a real specialized position. So,
yeah, we'll go ahead and move on to more news in the MLB. One of the big news going on today on Monday, the Tigers agree to a deal with number 1 pick Casey Mise and also their 3rd-round pick Kody Clemens. They agree to a deal. That team will be good in a couple years. Those are 2 guys who are studs in college right now. Casey Mise for the Auburn Tigers, Kody Clemens for Texas Longhorns. Dad played for the Longhorns, won a national championship there.
I remember back in the day when it was kind of difficult for teams to sign their... Okay, well, that's not true. I remember the Nationals used to have trouble signing Steven Strasburg and Bryce Harper to deals. I remember they took Bryce Harper took him to the deadline to sign their deal. So it's nice to see the Tigers get their guy. Casey Mise will improve that roster. The Tigers are in the middle of a rebuild, but what are they in, like 2nd or 3rd place in the Central? So they're in the middle of a rebuild, but there's a lot of teams in the AL Central that are in the middle of a rebuild, so they're just the best of the worst.
Yeah, the Tigers are half game back at the Twins right now. Really, this AL Central team division, not team, is not very good. The best team in there is the Indians, kind of hot streak, a winning percentage of .566. Then you have the Twins, who are below 500, Tigers below 500, and the White Sox and Royals, who are obviously both below 500. Really, it's not even like the Indians are going to run away with the division. That's not a surprise. But the Tigers are going to at least make it interesting in the next couple of years. we'll go ahead and have a All-Star Game ballot update. Nothing really changed. Actually, nothing actually changed on the National League All-Star ballot. Buster Posey leading catchers. Freddie Freeman leading all National League vote getters. Is he leading the whole league too?
I think so.
Yeah, we'll say he's leading the whole league because he's yellow here. So that must mean he's got a lot of votes. He has 2 million votes, and everybody else on this list has 1 million. So that's pretty impressive. Another brave Ozzie Albies at second base. Brandon Crawford getting the start at short. Nolan Arenado at third. Like we talked last week, you basically pencil him in there. Nick Markakis having a great year. It's a guy that him and Matt Kemp are some guys that you've seen in previous All-Star games. I actually don't know if Nick Markakis has been in an All-Star game.
This would be his first. This would be his first appearance in an All-Star game.
So it's good to see Nick Markakis there. He's been a name that you've heard a lot in the league, and it'll be good to see him at an All-Star game. Matt Kemp, I know he's been there. He's gone through some troubles back with LA. Let's see if he can do something. He's been having a decent year. Yeah. And Bryce Harper, hometown guys, will be a home game for him. And he did come out and say that if he made the All-Star game, he would compete in the home run derby.
Yeah, it's exciting to see. We see that a lot of teams. When the All-Star game was in Kansas City, I remember Robinson Cano got booed because he didn't pick hometown. Was it Billy Butler?
Billy Butler.
They don't want him to choose which. Billy Butler's not a perennial home run hitter, but you still got to go with the hometown guy. I remember Albert Pujols competed when it was in St. Louis. Todd Frazier competed when it was in Cincy. So if you're the hometown guy, if you're the best player, you got to compete. And so we don't see that a lot in like the NBA where the best players compete in like the dunk contest. So it's nice to see the best players competing in really the highlight of the All-Star break.
And moving on here, the Yankees look like they're going to try to trade and boost up their rotation. They just got swept by the Rays, which is not a good team to get swept by. But we saw a stat earlier today. I'll have to pull it up while KB's talking about the Yankees. That since they've gone with this opener strategy that they do, that they've got the lowest team ERA. And I think that that's a great idea that they've done. I had to have Kieran explain it to me, and I'll probably have to explain it to you too.
Yeah, the Yankees are. It seems like they're always looking to upgrade their rotation. They did last year with the addition of Sonny Gray. That just seems like Luis Severino's good. Masahiro Tanaka, I think he's missed some time. So it just seems like the Yankees have always been kind of lacking in the starting pitching category. Now, the two top options to trade for are two guys that are in the same division, which are Marcus Stroman and Chris Archer, the two top starting options, but they're in the division, so the Rays and Blue Jays are less than likely. Those are two teams that are rebuilding. I doubt that they're going to move them to New York if they move them at all. Some more realistic options, the Tigers, Michael Fulmer, who is a stud. He's a young guy. With that acquisition, the Yankees would get control. Since he's a young guy, I don't know if he's reached arbitration yet. He's also been a real bright spot for a kind of bleak Tigers team. Another guy that they could go after is Danny Duffy. The Royals are in the middle of a rebuild. They need the prospects. Danny Duffy hasn't been as good as he usually is, but maybe a change of scenery, and maybe it's just a down year. So there's a lot of options out there for the Yankees. We'll just see what they pull the trigger on. They got a lot of prospects to move too. So moving 2 or 3, I think they got 5 or 6 in the top 100. So moving 2 or 3 to pick up a frontier starter, I don't think that'll be something that Brian Cashman hesitates on.
Yeah, when you were mentioning pitchers in the division, one of the ones that I thought of was Zach Britton, but he's more of a back end guy. I think that he would not be bad to add to that Yankees bullpen if the Yankees are really looking to beef up on pitching, especially with the Red Sox having such good pitching, and that's really going to be their main competition. Is they're either gonna see him for the division, obviously, and maybe they'll see him in the playoffs. They will.
Yeah, the only two teams that the teams that the Yankees really have to compete with in the postseason are going to be the Astros, the Indians, and the Red Sox. All three of those teams have way better pitching than the Yankees have, with the Astros having the best pitching in baseball. The Red Sox staff I think it's underrated, and the Indians having multi-Cy Young Award winner Corey Kluber. So it'll be interesting to see what the Yankees do. They'll probably do something, but as we saw with Sonny Gray, usually the guy that they trade for at the deadline underperforms. So we'll see what they do.
Yep, it'll be exciting to see. We'll have some good baseball down the stretch. Trade deadline coming up. We talked with Andrew Wegley about this last week. You got to think Machado is going to be dealt at some point. I know the Diamondbacks have checked in with him, so have the Padres, but he wants to play shortstop again, and I think he has been playing shortstop a little bit for the Orioles, but he wants to be a permanent staple at the shortstop position.
Which will be interesting to see if the Yankees get him, because we saw in this last offseason when the Yankees acquired Giancarlo Stanton, rumors were that they were heavily pursuing Machado. But if Machado went to New York, he would probably play third base too, with Didi Gregorius there as kind of their penciled in shortstop. So it'll be difficult to see where he goes. I know the Cardinals have looked in on him. I know the Cubs have looked in on him. The Cubs, they've got Addison Russell there at shortstop and Chris Bryant there at third. They could move Addison Russell. That's a young guy. They could move him to the Orioles along with a package of prospects. The tough part about the Cubs is they have 0 top 100 prospects. So I don't think that they would be able to trade for Manny Machado at the deadline. But if you trade for Machado, you got to understand that he's a rental and he's going to go where the biggest dollar signs are, which will probably be New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, somewhere in that area. So, this offseason will be record breaking in terms of dollar signs.
I agree, and I think that especially when we're talking about the Royals trade deadline wise, they're dealing pieces. We talked about during the game who we thought the next person to go was, and we both agreed that it had to be Mike Moustakas since he's here on a 1-year deal. Getting a couple prospects for him is better than getting that compensation pick, which will probably be in the first 1A compensation. But you got to think those guys we have on 1-year deals, Alcides Escobar as well, might be viable options for a trade. We'll go ahead and move on and talk about the Pipeline Team of the Week, one of my favorite portions of the show. We'll talk about minor league baseball. Make sure you check out my This Week in Minor League Baseball post up on Nosebleed Radio, or Nosebleed Knowledge, not Nosebleed Radio. That's the podcast. This week's Astros top prospect Kyle Tucker headlines the latest prospect Team of the Week. He had a torrent 6-game stretch for the AAA Fresno, during which he batted .577 with 15 hits, ranked number 10 overall. Tucker is the lone MLB Pipeline top 100 prospect to crack this week's team. Interesting. Marks the third time in 4 weeks that only one top 100 prospect has earned Pipeline Team of the Week honors. Got anything? Before we completely close out the show, I wanted to touch on Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper has really picked it up these last 7 games. Through 24 ABs, got 6 hits, 3 ribbies, and is batting .250, on-base percentage .367, slugging percentage .500. That's up from what he's been doing in 2018 with an average of .219, .356 on-base percentage, and an .836 OPS. But I think that now that Bryce Harper's starting to figure it out, in a game last night, the Nationals were able to beat the Phillies, which is coming down to be a very important series of 2018 right now, is for the Nationals to win these games, because nobody really thought that the Phillies would be this good.
Yeah, I feel like nobody expected this team to be this good is kind of the motto for the 2018 season, where we have like the Mariners, the Braves, the Brewers, the Phillies, the Diamondbacks, teams like that. Nobody expected these teams to be this good. I feel like that's just the motto for this season. These teams are rebuilding, and they're rebuilding quickly, which the GMs are undervaluing their prospects as they call them up, which I guess is way better than overvaluing them. So these teams are getting better faster than GMs think they will, which I think if you're a fan of of a team that's just starting the rebuild, that's got to give you some hope.
Yeah, it's true. We talked about last week. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if we talked about this last week. How Dayton Moore came out and said that he didn't think this year was going to be as bad as it was. So I was like, I don't know if next year's going to be really bad or if that means the rebuild's ahead of schedule. Optimistically, I like to think that the rebuild's ahead of schedule. But it's kind of weird. We talk about you touched on the Mariners. The Mariners are one of those teams just going through a rough stretch right now where they have to play some good baseball teams, and the team that was behind them, the Astros, now in front of them, are playing some bad baseball teams. And you just saw really the Mariners are getting screwed because Chris Sale goes out and strikes out 13. And you can't hit. Like, Chris Sale is so good. The only bad part about the Red Sox and Chris Sale is the Red Sox usually never give Chris Sale run support.
Yeah, that's the tough part. We look at these teams. The Red Sox and the Mets are not comparable in a lot of categories, but the one category that they are comparable in is the lack of run support that they give their ace. The Red Sox lose a lot of Chris Sale starts simply because they don't give him any run support, and the same goes for the Mets and Jacob deGrom. I wouldn't be surprised if deGrom is moved. I wouldn't expect him to be moved in town or in city, but I would not be surprised if deGrom is moved, maybe even out of the league, the National League, that is, not the major leagues. But yeah, Chris Sale, stud, somebody you want for every team. I remember last year before he got moved, or was it last year, 2 years ago? The story of him cutting up the White Sox uniforms came out, and you're like, I don't know if that's a guy you want on your team. But then you look at the stats he puts up, and you could be like, oh, I don't care how bad his attitude is. We want this talent on our team.
He's a stud pitcher. He really is. He's got some nasty stuff. I mean, if you strike out 13 on like a regular basis, which seems like this guy does, strikes out 13 a lot. Like, you see double-digit strikeouts almost every time this guy takes the mound. It's unreal. Like, you take him with all the baggage that he has.
Oh, yeah.
Now, before we close out the show, this will be our last topic here. The opener strategy that the Rays have gone with. It's kind of an interesting strategy. I'll have Kieran describe it here.
All right. So the ideal is when you start a baseball game, teams put their best hitters 1, 2, 3, 4. So the best hitters are going out there first. So the opener strategy is where the Rays put their best reliever out there. So I think the past couple games, I think it was Sergio Romo opened 3 games last week, where he just goes out, used to coming out of the bullpen, boom, 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 sits their first 3 batters down. So he gets the first 3 or 4 outs of the game, faces the first 3 or 4 batters. Then you put the starter in, kind of get the starter some momentum in there. And then your starter will pitch the next 5 to 6 innings, and then you'll go into your setup man and your closer. It's interesting to think about because we see a lot of teams struggle, or a lot of pitchers struggle first, second, third time through the lineup, where if you are able to send in your setup or your best reliever, get their 3 best hitters out, that kind of lengthens the lifespan of your starter because he's not facing the best hitters as many times. It may be his 3rd time through the lineup, but he's only faced those guys 2 times. So it's an interesting strategy. We've kind of seen in the past years the changing role of the closer. We saw it kind of started with the Royals, their World Series run in 2015, and then was taken to another level with the Cubs World Series run, where the Indians used their best reliever, Andrew Miller, not in the closer spot. They saved that for Allen. And then the Cubs kind of did the same with Aroldis Chapman, bringing him in to pitch 2 or 3 innings on a regular basis. So it's just kind of the next change for baseball. I don't think this is one that's going to stick, though. I think teams will eventually figure out how to combat it. But it's worked for the Rays, like Tucker pointed out before, that they've now got they've had the major league best ERA since they started this strategy, and it's really helped for a team that people didn't think was going to be very good at all. So I hope that it works out. I like the Rays. They are a fun team to watch, even though nobody goes to watch them. So I hope it works out for them. I hope they're able to play spoiler for the Yankees a few more times throughout the season.
What's the best part about the Rays is that they just swept the Yankees. And as you know, I'm not a big Yankees fan. So to see the Yankees lose always brings me happiness. Now, this kind of reminds me of what Joe Madden did with the Cubs. And he went and batted his pitcher in the 8 hole.
Mhm.
Kind of something like that. Kind of spark his team, mix it up a little bit. And it's something that just hasn't been seen before. So people just don't know. That's kind of like when a new guy comes up out of the minors and he starts really hot because they've never seen this guy before. But obviously, this is a league full of adjustments. Adjustments will be made, and I believe that you won't see this strategy for very much longer.
Yeah, like Tucker said, the Joe Madden, Tony La Russa of hitting the pitcher 8 hole. Also, the new iteration of not hitting your best hitter 3 hole, but moving it up to the 2 slot, kind of table setter. So, yeah, it's interesting to see. Like Tucker said, I don't think this is one that's going to stick around very much, but it's kind of like the Wildcat formation. People don't when the Dolphins first started running the Wildcat, people had no clue what to do with it, and it was almost a touchdown every time. It was very effective. This, I bet it lasts for maybe until August, maybe the rest of the season, but next year more teams are going to start doing it. It's going to lose its luster. It won't last much longer.
This is fun. We need to do more of these where we go to games and after the game, sit in the car and do a podcast.
Oh yeah.
For my boy KB, Kieran Brennan, I'm Tucker Franklin. This has been Turn 2 Podcast. We didn't have our series to watch this week, so send us your series to watch at Nosebleed now, at Nosebleeds No on Facebook, Nosebleed Knowledge. So make sure you send us your series to watch, and we'll see if we think the same. We'll let you know what we think about it. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the flip.